The emergency klaxon screamed through the bridge of the human battleship Defiance as Captain Sarah Chen stared at the massive alien vessel floating in the void before them. It was beautiful in its terror, a crystalline structure that seemed to bend light itself, creating rainbow patterns that danced across her ship's hull. "Captain, they're not responding to any of our hails," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. His voice carried the tension that had gripped the entire crew for the past 6 hours. Sarah's knuckles were white as she gripped the armrest of her command chair. 3 months ago, humanity had made first contact with this species, the Veiltar. It should have been the greatest moment in human history. Instead, it had become their greatest nightmare. The first diplomatic meeting had gone horribly wrong. A misunderstanding, a nervous marine, a single plasma shot that killed a Veiltar ambassador. Now 18 human colonies had gone silent. 18 worlds, millions of lives, simply gone. "Ma'am," whispered Dr. James Kowalski, the ship's xenobiologist, stepping closer to her chair. "There's something you need to see." Sarah turned to look at the thin, nervous man who had been studying the Veiltar since first contact. His usually neat hair was disheveled, and dark circles ringed his eyes. "What is it, Doctor?" "We found a survivor. From the Kepler 442 colony. He's not entirely human anymore." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Kepler 442 had been the first colony to go dark after the diplomatic incident. "What do you mean, not entirely human?" "They changed him, Captain. Enhanced him somehow, and he's been asking to speak with you. He says he has a message from something he calls the Seer." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. In all their encounters with the Veiltar, they had never mentioned any being called the Seer. "Bring him to me. Now." 10 minutes later, the bridge doors hissed open. Sarah had to suppress a gasp when she saw what walked through them. The man had once been human. She could see that much in his basic shape and structure. But his skin had taken on a translucent quality, with veins of silver light pulsing beneath the surface. His eyes had become pools of shifting color, like looking into the aurora borealis itself. "Captain Chen," the transformed man spoke, and his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in her bones. "My name was David Park. I was a teacher on Kepler 442. I taught children about the stars, about the universe, about how we were not alone." He smiled sadly. "I was right about that last part." "David," Sarah said carefully, "Dr. Kowalski tells me you have a message for me." David nodded slowly. "The Seer spoke to me before they changed me. He told me things about your species, about mine, about what's coming." "What Seer?" "We've never encountered. The Veiltar have many castes, Captain. Warriors, workers, builders, artists. But above them all are the Seers. They see probability streams, potential futures branching out like rivers through time." David's strange eyes fixed on hers. "He showed me what will happen if you continue down this path." Sarah leaned forward. "What path?" "The path of striking first. The path of fear, driving you to attack before you understand. The path that leads to the extinction of both our species." Lieutenant Torres interrupted from his station. "Captain, the alien vessel is moving. They're backing away from us." On the main screen, the crystalline ship was indeed retreating, but not in any pattern Sarah recognized as fearful flight. It moved with purpose, with intention. "They're not running," David said, reading her expression. "They're giving you space to think. The Seer told them to wait, to give you this one chance to hear the truth." "And what truth is that?" Sarah demanded. David closed his transformed eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they swirled with new colors, deep purples and golds that seemed to hold depths she couldn't fathom. "If you strike first," he said, his voice now carrying the weight of prophecy, "they'll never stop. Not until every human world is silent. Not until our species is nothing but a memory carved into dead stone." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of ship systems. Sarah felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders. "But Captain," David continued, There's another path, a harder path, but one that leads to survival. For both species. What do you want me to do? Sarah whispered. David smiled, and for a moment she could see the teacher he had once been, the man who had loved showing children the wonders of the universe. Listen, he said simply, and learn why we were really contacted in the first place. Chapter 2. The deeper truth: Sarah ordered the ship to stand down from combat readiness despite the protests from her tactical officer. She had David moved to the secure briefing room, along with her senior staff and Dr. Kowalski. The transformed man sat at the head of the table, his silvery veins pulsing with a gentle light that seemed to respond to his emotions. Before I tell you what the Seer showed me, David began, I need you to understand something about the Veiltar. They didn't come to us by accident. They've been watching humanity for over 200 years. Commander Martinez, Sarah's first officer, leaned forward aggressively. Watching us? Spying on us? Studying us, David corrected gently. The Veiltar are an ancient species, Captain. They've encountered hundreds of intelligent races across the galaxy. Some became allies. Others... He paused, his aurora eyes growing dim. Others became extinct. What's that supposed to mean? Martinez demanded. David looked directly at Sarah. There's something coming, Captain. Something that makes the Veiltar look like children playing with toys. The Seers call them the Harvest. Dr. Kowalski, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up sharply. Harvest? What kind of harvest? Species, David said simply. The harvest moves through the galaxy in cycles, appearing every few thousand years. They consume entire civilizations, absorbing their knowledge, their culture, their very essence. The Veiltar have survived 3 previous harvest events, but barely. Sarah felt cold fingers of dread walking up her spine. And you're telling me this harvest is coming here? It's already started moving in this direction. The Seers detected the gravitational anomalies 6 months ago. That's why they finally made contact with humanity. They need allies, Captain. The Veiltar alone can't stop what's coming. Lieutenant Torres, who had been monitoring communications, suddenly spoke up. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Veiltar vessel. It's not audio or visual. It's something else. Entirely. David smiled sadly. They're offering to show you the same way they showed me. But I have to warn you. Once you see what the Seer sees, you can never unsee it. Sarah stood up, pacing to the viewport where she could see the crystalline alien ship waiting in the distance. The weight of decision pressed down on her. 18 colonies already dead. Millions of people who had trusted her government to protect them. If I agree to this viewing, what happens to me? You'll understand, David said simply. You'll see the streams of possibility, the paths that lead to survival, and the ones that lead to extinction. You'll see why the first diplomatic meeting was never supposed to happen the way it did. What do you mean? David's expression grew pained. The Seer tried to warn Ambassador Thorne, tried to explain that the Veiltar greeting ritual involves a flash of bioluminescence that can be mistaken for aggression by species who don't understand it. But the translation matrix wasn't complete. The warning came through as a threat. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the reports from the first contact. Ambassador Thorne had mentioned that the alien had begun glowing menacingly just before Marine Sergeant Williams had opened fire. So it was all a misunderstanding? Yes and no, David replied. The shooting was a misunderstanding. But your government's response afterward was not. When you launched military expeditions to the Veiltar worlds, when you declared them hostile, without attempting further communication, you confirmed their worst fears about humanity. Commander Martinez slammed his hand on the table. They wiped out 18 colonies. What were we supposed to do? David turned his transformed gaze on the angry officer. They were defending themselves, Commander. Each of those colonies had been turned into military staging areas, weapons platforms aimed at Veiltar space. From their perspective, humanity had declared war. Because we had, Sarah whispered, the full horror of the situation finally becoming clear. We let fear drive us to strike first. Exactly. And now both species are locked in a conflict that will destroy us all if it continues. Unless... David stood up, his silver veins pulsing brighter. Unless someone has the courage to break the cycle. Sarah looked around the room at her officers. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also something else. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just the desperate wish that there might be another way forward. What would I have to do? Meet with the Seer. Let him show you the probability streams. See for yourself what choices lead to survival and which ones lead to extinction. David's voice grew softer. But understand, Captain, once you see the future, you become responsible for it. Sarah turned back to the viewport, staring at the alien ship that held either humanity's salvation or its doom. Behind her, she could hear the quiet breathing of her crew, all waiting for her decision. Torres, she said finally, open a channel to the Veiltar vessel. Captain, Martinez protested, you can't be serious. This could be a trap. Sarah turned to face her first officer. Commander, we've been fighting this war for 3 months. How many more colonies are we going to lose before we admit that military force isn't working? She walked back to the communications station. Torres, are you ready? The young lieutenant nodded nervously. Channel open, Captain. Sarah took a deep breath. Veiltar vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the human ship Defiance. I understand you have a Seer who wishes to speak with me. I accept your invitation. The response came immediately, not through the speakers but directly into Sarah's mind. The voice was ancient, layered with harmonics that spoke of wisdom gathered across eons. Captain Chen, we have been waiting. Come aboard our vessel, and we will show you the paths that lead through the darkness ahead. Chapter 3. The Seer's vision, the transport to the Veiltar vessel, was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. Instead of the harsh mechanical shuttles she was used to, she found herself enclosed in what could only be described as a bubble of living light. It carried her gently through the void, maintaining perfect atmospheric pressure and temperature while offering a panoramic view of space around her. David floated beside her in his own luminous transport, his transformed features serene. Try not to resist what you're about to see, Captain. The Seer's visions can be overwhelming if you fight them. As they approached the crystalline ship, Sarah could see that it wasn't just beautiful, it was alive. Patterns of light flowed through its structure like blood through veins, and she could swear she felt it watching her approach. The docking process was seamless. One moment they were floating in space, the next they were standing in a chamber that seemed to be carved from a single massive gemstone. The walls pulsed with soft, ever-changing colors, and the air itself felt charged with energy. Welcome, Captain Chen. Sarah turned toward the voice and found herself face to face with her first Veiltar. The being was tall and graceful, with limbs that seemed to bend in ways that should have been impossible. Its skin was translucent, showing the flow of bioluminescent fluids beneath, and its face was elongated with large, multifaceted eyes that reflected the light around them. I am what you would call a guide, the alien continued, its voice carrying musical undertones. I will escort you to the Seer, but first, you must understand. What you are about to experience will change you. Not physically, as your friend. David was changed, but mentally, spiritually. Are you prepared for this? Sarah looked at David, who nodded encouragingly. I'm ready. The guide led them through corridors that seemed to grow and shift around them, the crystalline walls flowing like water while somehow maintaining their solid structure. Other Veiltar passed them, some similar to their guide, others completely different in form and function. Sarah realized she was seeing different castes of their species, each adapted for specific roles in their society. They stopped before a chamber that was different from the others. Where the rest of the ship pulsed with gentle light, this room seemed to absorb illumination, creating a sense of infinite depth. At its center sat the most unusual Veiltar Sarah had yet seen. The Seer was ancient. She could feel that immediately. Its body was smaller than the others, almost frail-looking, But its eyes contained the weight of millennia. They were not just multifaceted like the guides, but seemed to contain actual depth, as if she were looking into pools that went on forever. "Sit, Captain Chen." The seer spoke without moving its mouth, the words forming directly in her mind. "What I'm about to show you may be difficult to accept. Your species has a strong attachment to linear thinking, to cause and effect proceeding in straight lines. Reality is far more complex." Sarah sat on what appeared to be a crystalline chair that molded itself to her body. "I understand. Do you?" The seer's ancient eyes fixed on hers. "We shall see." The chamber around them began to change. The walls dissolved, and Sarah found herself floating in a space that contained everything. She could see threads of light stretching in all directions, each one pulsing with different colors and intensities. "These are the probability streams," the seer explained. "Each thread represents a potential future, a path that reality might take based on the choices made by conscious beings. Watch." One of the threads began to glow brighter, and Sarah found herself pulled into it. Suddenly she was experiencing visions, not watching them, but living them as if they were her own memories. She saw the Defiance firing on the Veiltar vessel, saw her crew celebrating a victory that lasted only hours before massive alien reinforcements arrived, saw human colonies burning under weapons that turned entire atmospheres into poison, saw the last human ships fleeing through space, pursued by an implacable enemy that would never stop, never forgive, never forget. "This is what happens if you choose the path of the first strike," the seer's voice echoed around her. "Your species dies within 2 years." The vision shifted, and Sarah saw another timeline. Here, humanity and the Veiltar continued their war, both species growing weaker, more desperate. Neither side could achieve decisive victory, so the conflict dragged on for decades. Ships burning in the void, colonies abandoned, resources exhausted in an endless cycle of retaliation. "And in this timeline," the seer continued, "both our species are so weakened that when the harvest arrives, we fall within hours, instead of fighting for years." "The harvest," Sarah gasped. "Show me what's coming." The vision changed again, and Sarah's mind nearly broke under the weight of what she saw. Ships the size of moons, moving through space with purpose that transcended any biological motivation. Where they passed, entire star systems went dark, not destroyed, consumed. The very matter of planets and stars being converted into something else, something alien and hungry. "They are not evil," the seer explained as Sarah watched worlds die. "Evil implies choice, emotion, some recognizable motivation. The harvest simply is. They consume complexity, knowledge, the patterns that make up consciousness itself. To them, we are no different from the bacteria in your intestines, useful for a time, then discarded when no longer needed." Sarah wanted to look away but found she could not. The visions continued, showing her glimpses of civilizations that had faced the harvest before. Some had fought valiantly and died heroically. Others had tried to hide and been found anyway. A few had managed to slow the harvest's advance, but none had stopped it entirely. "How long do we have?" she whispered. "The gravitational distortions suggest they will reach this sector in approximately 18 of your months," the seer replied. "Perhaps less if they find something that particularly interests them." "And you think humanity and the Veiltar together can stop them?" "No," the seer said simply. "We cannot stop them, but we might survive them." The visions shifted again, and Sarah saw a different kind of future. Human and Veiltar ships working together, their different technologies complementing each other. Joint colonies where both species lived and worked side by side. Children, both human and Veiltar, learning from each other, growing up together. "Your species has something we lack," the seer explained. "Adaptability, creativity born from chaos. We Veiltar are ancient and wise, but we are also set in our ways. We think in patterns that have served us for millennia, but may not be sufficient for what's coming. And we have something you need? Your unpredictability. Your ability to find solutions that should not work but somehow do. your talent for thriving in impossible situations. The seer's ancient eyes seemed to smile. The harvest has encountered species like us before. They know how we think, how we fight, how we hide, but they have never encountered anything like humanity. Sarah saw visions of the future war against the harvest. Not a conventional battle with ships and weapons, but something far more complex. Human creativity combining with Veiltar wisdom to create solutions neither species could have achieved alone. Technologies that bent the rules of physics, strategies that turned the harvest's own nature against them, ways of hiding entire civilizations in plain sight. This is what's possible if our species unite, the seer said. Not victory in the traditional sense, but survival. A chance to outlast the harvest, to preserve something of both our cultures for the generations that will come after. The visions began to fade, and Sarah found herself back in the crystal chamber. Her mind felt expanded, stretched by the experience of seeing through cosmic eyes. She understood now why David had been changed by his encounter with the Veiltar. How could anyone experience such visions and remain unchanged? The choice is yours, Captain Chen, the seer said. You can return to your ship and continue the war that will destroy both our species, or you can help us forge a new path, one that offers hope for survival in the darkness ahead. Sarah stood up slowly, her legs unsteady from the intensity of what she had experienced. What would I need to do? First, convince your government to cease hostilities, then help us prepare for what's coming. And finally, the seer paused, its ancient eyes growing sad. Be ready to make sacrifices that will ensure some part of both our species survives, even if not all of us do. ODT, Chapter 4. The choice Sarah returned to the Defiance with her mind reeling from everything she had seen. The probability stream still flickered at the edges of her vision, ghostly reminders of the futures that hung in the balance. Her crew looked at her expectantly as she stepped onto the bridge, but she could see the fear in their eyes. Fear of what she might have learned. Fear of what she might decide. Commander Martinez, I need to speak with Fleet Command immediately, she said, settling into her captain's chair with a weight that hadn't been there before. Ma'am, are you all right? Lieutenant Torres asked carefully. You look different. Sarah caught her reflection in a dark screen and understood what he meant. Her eyes held depths they hadn't possessed before, as if she had seen too, much to ever be quite the same again. I'm fine, Lieutenant, just informed. She turned to her first officer. Marcus, I know what I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane, but I need you to trust me. Commander Martinez had served with Sarah for 5 years. They had been through battles, crisis situations, and the kind of impossible decisions that forged unbreakable bonds between officers. But the look he gave her now was filled with uncertainty. The Veiltar aren't our enemies, Sarah began. They never were. Everything that's happened, the colonies, the war, all of it. It's been a massive misunderstanding built on fear and poor communication. Captain, Martinez said carefully, they destroyed 18 colonies. Millions of people are dead. Military installations, Sarah corrected. Every single colony that was attacked had been converted into a weapons platform aimed at Veiltar space. From their perspective, we declared war the moment we started building those installations. Dr. Kowalski stepped forward. Captain, what exactly did you see over there? Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the vast tapestry of probability, streams. The future, Doctor, all the possible futures. And in every timeline where humanity and the Veiltar continue fighting, we both lose. But there's something else coming. Something that makes our current conflict look like children arguing in a playground. She told them about the harvest, about the ancient enemy that consumed entire civilizations, about the 18 months they had to prepare. Her crew listened in stunned silence as she described the visions the seer had shown her. You're talking about alien invasion, Martinez said finally. The oldest science fiction trope in the book. No, Marcus, I'm talking about alien consumption. These aren't invaders looking for resources or territory. They're harvesters. They turn complex matter into simpler forms, consciousness into base energy. When they're done with a star system, there's nothing left but empty space and dust. Torres looked up from his communications console. Captain, I'm getting signals from Fleet Command. Admiral Harrison wants to speak with you immediately. Sarah nodded grimly. Admiral Harrison was a good officer, but he was also a man who had lost his own son in the attack on the Centauri colony. Convincing him to cease hostilities would be like asking a parent to forgive their child's killer. Put him through. Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared on the main screen. His expression, thunderous. Captain Chen, I've been receiving some very disturbing reports about your activities. Are you telling me you've been consorting with the enemy? Admiral, I've been gathering intelligence, and what I've learned changes everything. The only thing that's changed is that you seem to have forgotten your duty to humanity, Harrison snapped. I'm ordering you to destroy that alien vessel and return to base immediately. Sarah felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. In the probability streams, she had seen what happened if she followed this order. The Veiltar ship would fight back, her crew would die, and humanity would march inexorably toward extinction. I'm afraid I can't do that, Admiral. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Martinez stepped closer to her chair, his hand moving toward his sidearm. Even her own crew was preparing to relieve her of command. Admiral, I need you to listen to me, Sarah continued. In 18 months, something is going to arrive in this sector that will make the Veiltar look like beneficial neighbors. If we're still fighting each other when it gets here, both species will be extinct within hours of first contact. Captain, you sound like you've been compromised, Harrison said coldly. I'm relieving you of command under Article. Computer. Authorization Chen Alpha 77, Sarah interrupted. Seal the bridge and activate emergency protocols. The bridge doors locked with an audible click, and the lights shifted to amber alert status. Her crew stared at her in shock. Captain, what are you doing? Martinez demanded. What I have to do, Sarah replied. She stood up and moved to the communications console. Torres, open a channel to all human ships in the sector. Ma'am, I can't. That's an order, Lieutenant. Torres looked between Sarah and Martinez, torn between conflicting loyalties. Finally, he complied. Channel open, Captain. Sarah took a deep breath. This moment would define not just her career, but potentially the future of human civilization. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UHS Defiance, addressing all human vessels in Sector 7. I am about to share information that will sound impossible, but I need you to listen. Our war with the Veiltar is based on a misunderstanding. They are not our enemies. They are our potential allies against a threat that neither species can face alone. She told them everything. About the Seer's visions, about the harvest, about the probability streams that showed humanity's extinction in every timeline where the war continued. Some ships cut their communications immediately. Others listened in stunned silence. When she finished, Admiral Harrison's face had gone pale. Captain, even if what you're saying is true, how can we trust them? How can we trust beings who killed millions of our people? The same way they're being asked to trust us, Admiral. The beings who killed their ambassador, who turned colonies into weapons platforms, who declared war without attempting further communication. Sarah's voice carried the weight of the visions she had seen. Both species made mistakes. Both species acted out of fear. But if we can't move past those mistakes, we're all going to die. David, who had been standing quietly at the back of the bridge, stepped forward. Admiral, may I speak? Harrison's eyes widened as he took in David's transformed appearance. My God, what did they do to you? They saved me, David said simply. When the Veiltar came to Kepler 442, they found a colony that had been turned into a military base. But they also found civilians, teachers, doctors, children who had nothing to do with the weapons installations. They could have killed us all. Instead, they tried to protect us. By turning you into that, David smiled, sadly. By giving me the ability to survive what they knew was coming. The transformation isn't a punishment, Admiral. It's a gift. The Veiltar lived for thousands of years. They thought if they could extend human lifespans, we might have time to learn wisdom along with knowledge. Sarah saw something shift in Harrison's expression. The anger was still there, but it was being tempered by uncertainty. "Assuming any of this is true," the Admiral said slowly, "what exactly are you proposing?" "A ceasefire," Sarah replied. "Immediate cessation of hostilities while we work together to prepare for the harvest. The Veiltar have technologies we need, and apparently we have qualities they lack. Together we might actually survive what's coming. And if you're wrong, if this is all some elaborate alien deception?" Sarah looked directly into the Admiral's eyes. "Then we're no worse off than we are now, sir. We're already losing this war. Our current strategy leads to extinction in every timeline I've seen. At least this way, we have a chance." The communication channel was silent for long minutes as Harrison weighed the decision. Finally, he spoke. "I'm going to regret this," he said quietly. "All ships, this is Admiral Harrison. Effective immediately, you are ordered to cease all hostile actions against Veiltar vessels. Repeat, all human ships are to stand down and await further orders." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew this was only the beginning. "Thank you, Admiral. But there's one more thing. We need to start joint operations immediately. The harvest isn't going to wait for us to get comfortable with each other." 6 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the joint human Veiltar station that had been constructed at the edge of the solar system. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, she could see ships from both species working together, their different technologies creating something neither could have achieved alone. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Human durability and adaptability combined with Veiltar artistry and precision had created a structure that was both beautiful and functional. Living crystal corridors pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, while human-designed quantum computers processed vast amounts of data from deep space sensors. "The early warning system is online," reported Dr. Kowalski, who had been working with Veiltar scientists to develop detection methods for the harvest's approach. "If they're coming, we'll know about it weeks before they arrive." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the training exercises taking place nearby. Human and Veiltar pilots were learning to fly in mixed squadrons, their different approaches to combat creating tactical possibilities that neither species had previously imagined. "Any word from the outer colonies?" she asked. "The evacuation of non-essential personnel is proceeding ahead of schedule," David reported. His transformation had continued over the months, making him an ideal liaison between the species. "Both human and Veiltar populations are being moved to the defensive installations." The plan they had developed was ambitious and desperate in equal measure. Instead of trying to fight the harvest directly, a strategy that had failed every other civilization, they would attempt to hide their populations in pocket dimensions created by Veiltar technology and stabilized by human engineering. It was untested, dangerous, and probably impossible. It was also their only hope. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called from the communications station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Array." Sarah felt her blood turn cold. "Put it through." The holographic display activated, showing the face of Commander Reyes, who was stationed at the outermost sensor platform. Her expression was grim. "Captain, we've detected massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. They're not moving like normal objects. The distortions are following patterns we've never seen before." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the Seer's visions of ships the size of moons moving through space with purpose that transcended biological understanding. "How long do we have?" "Based on current trajectory and speed, maybe 3 weeks, but Captain, there's something else. The distortions are getting larger. Whatever's coming, it's bigger than our worst-case projections." The communication ended, leaving the observation deck in silence. Sarah looked around at the beings who had become her extended family over the past months, humans and Veiltar working together, united by necessity and increasingly by genuine friendship. "Well," she said finally, "I guess we're about to find out if all our preparation was worth it." David stepped up beside her, his aurora eyes reflecting the stars outside. "The Seer wanted me to tell you something, Captain. He said that regardless of what happens in the next few weeks, what we've accomplished here is unprecedented. Two species learning to trust each other, to work together, to become something greater than the sum of their parts. But will it be enough? David smiled, and for a moment she could see the teacher he had once been, the man who had believed in showing children the wonders of the universe. That's what we're about to find out. But I can tell you this. If the harvest expected, to find two species weakened by war, divided by fear and mistrust, they're going to be very surprised. Sarah turned back to the viewport, watching human and Veiltar ships moving in perfect formation against the backdrop of stars. Somewhere out there, an ancient enemy was approaching, and force that had consumed countless civilizations across the galaxy. But for the first time since the Seer had shown her the probability streams, Sarah felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. The war between humanity and the Veiltar was over. The real fight was about to begin.